Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to be doing a double book outlet haul because earlier in the month I placed an order, like normal, for a book outlet, and later, I think that day in my email, I get an email from book outlet saying, hey, in like 2 or 3 days, we're going to be doing our, big summer sale thing where pretty much every book has, so much percentage off, and here's some coupon money to just take off your total. And I was like, yeah, I just placed an order, so should I be responsible and just forget about this, or just, just place another order? And so that's what I did, and that's why we're doing a double book outlet haul. I'm probably going to go through these kind of quickly because there's 8 books in the first order, and I think 15 for myself in the second order. Yeah, I kind of just sort of fell for that whole like sales pitch thing, I guess. But like I said, I'm probably gonna go through these pretty quick. So if you have any questions or if you have comments on any of them, just leave them down below. I'd be happy to talk to you about them. But let's just get right to it, and we're gonna start with the first 8 books from the first order. And I got 2 fantasy books in that order. And the first one is Return of Souls by Andy Remick. And I know nothing about this except it's a World War I based fantasy. It's actually the second book in a trilogy, but they're kind of short, so I just gotta find the first one, which is A Song for No Man's Land, and that's the name of the trilogy. But you guys probably know I love World War I history, so I could not pass up on a World War I fantasy book. Alright, the second one was Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. Even though I was kind of disappointed with Way of Kings, yeah, check out that huge, long discussion panel video. I'll put that link down below. But yeah, everyone says Words of Radiance, the second book, and this is the third book in the series. The way Words of Radiance picks up, so I figured, I'm going to read that one. If it's better, I might as well like keep the series going, and I got this one on a pretty good deal, so that's why I picked that one up. And now for some life science books. Picked up The Reef by Ian McKellen. And it just has an awesome, beautiful cover, as you can see. And it's just about the Great Barrier Reef, which I'd be excited to learn about. And I love bird books, as you guys know, even though this really isn't a bird book, but it's got nice illustrations on the cover. And it's Arrival of the Fittest by Andreas Wagner, and it's How Nature Innovates. And I'm not quite sure exactly what it's about, but I love the cover, and I like life science books, so I picked that one up. As I'll pick up a World War I book, and this is probably the one I'm most excited about from these first 8 books, and it's The Wolf by Richard Gilliatt and Peter Honnen, and the subtitle is The Mystery Raider That Terrorized the Seas During World War I, and this is about a German battleship, basically, that was disguised sort of as a merchant vessel, that went around for like a year or 2 without radio contact, essentially, and took like 20 ships prisoner, or sunk 20 ships around the world, basically. And it's pretty much just a story of this entire ship, and it looks really interesting, and this is the one, like I said, I'm probably most excited about reading. I also picked up The Cavalry Lance. As you guys might have seen from some of the other videos, I read a lot of these little Osprey publishing books, and this is from a series I haven't read yet, which is the Weapons series, and this is number 59, and it's just really in-depth. These are really in-depth books on very, very specific historical topics, and they have really great, accurate illustrations and photographs throughout the book, which is like kind of their like highlight. As you can see, it just looks awesome. I'm excited to read about The Cavalry Lance. And then I also picked up 2 kind of more just regular traditional history books. As you guys can probably see, that's my favorite subject. I picked up The Third Horseman, A Story of Weather War and the Famine History Forgot by William Rosen. And this is by the author that wrote Justinian's Flee, if you guys have heard of that book. And I guess this is about like a really basically bad time in the 13th century or early 14th century. And it's a time period most people haven't heard of, or I guess the incidents aren't really heard of, I suppose I should say. And just excited to learn about that era. And I also picked up Lords of the Sea by John Hale, and the subtitle is The Epic Story of the Athenian Navy and the Birth of Democracy. Even though Athens and Sparta are actually like some of my least favorite Greek city-states, obviously there's just a lot more material written about them. But I haven't read much like proper Greek history in a while, so I picked this one up. So those are the 8 books from the first haul. So now let's get to the second haul. And I only picked up 3 fantasy books in this one. I don't know, I guess I just didn't see anything I really, really liked. But I got Blackwing by Ed McDonald. I've seen this one floating around on Twitter a ton. So I picked this one up. Everyone's been raving about it pretty good. So, and it's got a cool blackbird on the cover, which obviously you can't hurt it with me. So definitely picked this one up. And excited to see what that one holds. I also picked up 2. It's kind of funny. I picked up a World War I fantasy, and these are some like Revolutionary War fantasies, I guess. And it's A Plunder of Souls and Thieves' Quarry by D.B. Jackson. And this is actually the 2nd and 3rd book in a tetralogy, I believe. Not really sure. When I saw the cover, I looked the series up, and it's basically like it's like a fantasy setting during the Revolutionary War in Boston, Massachusetts. So it just sounded really cool, and I'm just ready to attempt some new like subgenres of fantasy with the World War I fantasy and the Revolutionary War fantasy. See what that's all about. I picked up a ton of life science books in this haul, and these 2 dog books I couldn't pass up. I got Rescued, What Second Chance Dogs Teach Us About Living with Purpose, Living with Abandon, Finding Joy in the Little Things by Peter Zutlin. And mostly I got this book because that dog looks pretty close to like my dog Daisy. I'll probably try and get a bunch of footage of her when I do a book review of this one. So I'm pretty much a sap and couldn't pass that one up. And I got another dog book, which is What the Dog Knows, Science and the Amazing Ways Dogs Perceive the World. And this is, I think, more of a scientific book on basically how dogs think and operate and use their sense of smell and that sort of thing to basically do what they do. Alright, a couple more. This is kind of a mix of life science and history, and it's called Spirals in Time by Helen Scales, and the subtitle is The Secret Life and Curious Afterlife of Seashells. And it had a really cool cover, I thought. Life science books, just in general, usually have like really nice covers, especially if they got like cool illustrations like that. And I think it's about basically what happens to seashells from, things like Nautilus and all the other, totally drawing up like all those other animals that use shells like snails and stuff like that, and see basically what happens to them basically over thousands of millions of years. Thought that might be kind of interesting. Not quite sure why I picked up The Reason for Flowers, Their History, Culture, Biology, and How They Change Our Lives by Steeder Bookman. But I figured if I'm doing the life sciences, I can't just do just animals, so I figured I'd pick up a book on, some sort of plants, and The Reason for Flowers, for whatever reason, stuck with me, and it's probably because it has their history, like, right in the beginning of the subtitle. But it's actually quite a big book, so I'm actually interested to see what that book's actually going to entail. I got House Guest and House Pest, The Natural History of Animals in the Home by Richard Jones, and I'm afraid I'm probably just going to be creeped out after I read this book about all the, creepy stuff living in my house. So, we'll see about that one. I wanted to try another new genre, and the book is A Naturalist Goes Fishing, Casting Fragile Waters from the Gulf of Mexico to New Zealand's South Island by James McClintock. And this sort of like natural history memoirs are kind of like a fairly big-ish genre, I guess. Especially kind of in the hunting stuff, but I'm not really big into hunting, but fishing I am, so I thought, I might as well try out a new genre, and just basically it's just stories and just thoughts and things of that nature on where this author goes, like fishing around the world and stuff like that. I don't know, I thought it might be kind of interesting to try something new. And probably the book I'm most excited about from this second haul is The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration into the Wonder of Consciousness by Cy Montgomery. I read Other Minds not too long ago. I didn't actually like Other Minds a whole lot. I thought it was really interesting. I liked the concept, but for what I've seen, other people they have very similar concepts in their books. But I've just seen from some of the book reviews and that sort of thing on this book in particular. Just a really amazing science fiction, life science, non-fiction book. So I'm definitely excited to get this one read. And I also picked up some more regular history books, and I got a World War I book, and it's First Over There, The Attack on Cantigny, America's First Battle of World War I by Matthew Davenport. And this is obviously about the first basically major American battle over in Europe during World War One. And as you guys know, like I said earlier, I read a lot of World War One history, so that's why I picked that one up. I was just really curious about this book. It's called Rest in Pieces: The Curious Fates of Famous Corpses, by Bess Lovejoy. Because who doesn't want to read a book about, you know, famous skeletons and bodies? Oh man, let's see, I picked up In the Wake of the Plague, The Black Death and the World It Made by Norman Cantor. I have another book by him somewhere on my shelf. I read like the first chapter a long time ago, but just never finished it, don't know why. And I think it's like Civilization of the Middle Ages, so it's kind of like more of a just a broad intro introductory book to a big field of study, which is probably why I didn't finish it, because I like more specific books. So I picked this one up just because I wanted to try that author out, because he's written a lot of medieval history books. Picked up Marco Polo, The Journey That Changed the World by John Mann, largely because it was cheap, but also because I want to see if this book deals with whether or not Marco Polo actually, did his travels or not, because that's actually a fairly contentious topic now in history, because there is a whole school of thought that basically say that the whole thing, it's not necessarily a fraud per se, but he probably didn't actually go to all the places he did, and that sort of thing. It's more like secondhand knowledge. So I'm interested to see if that's brought up in that book, because I've never read a Marco Polo history book. And my last book is The Trojan War by Barry Strauss, and I read The Death of Caesar by him back in March, tried to do it in time for the Ides of March, didn't quite get there, but I actually really enjoyed it. He's an author I'd never read before. I read The Death of Caesar, and I thought he just pumped out just tons of not even sure why I didn't think it. I just figured he wrote, so I saw so many of his books, I just figured they were just sort of little wimpy popular history books that didn't have a lot of substance to them, but it was really, really good. So I picked up another book by him, and this one's The Trojan War, and I'm interested to see whether this is, how much is actual history, and how much is more just sort of folklore, stuff like that. Definitely excited to pick that one up. So there are the 23 books that I bought from Book Outlet in those two basically Book Outlet orders. The past month. It's a little excessive probably, but they kind of got me with that whole sale thing, especially after the first order and then getting the email literally the same later that day. But I'm still excited for most of them, and they were obviously really good deals from Book Outlet, so it can't go wrong. It can't go too wrong with that. So like I said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll be glad to talk to you about any of the books. And whatever you're reading, always remember, read victoriously.